Finally, it's a game day. That's right, kiddies. After what feels like forever, even though there was only 4 days off, the Washington Capitals are getting ready for a hockey game with another team involved. And dare I say, just about everyone healthy?
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Capitals. I am your host, as always, the insider to the insiders, Tyler Kuehl. That's right. That is right. Tonight, the Washington Capitals will play a hockey game. Finally. I mean, as much as I know you guys have loved hearing me just ramble on about a bunch of sweet nothings, even though the interview with John Walton yesterday was pretty cool. We have a game to preview tonight. The St. Louis Blues, hot off of giving up a 3-1 lead off the Pittsburgh Penguins on Thursday night. Wednesday night. Don't even know what day it is anymore. On Wednesday night, they will be taking on the Washington Capitals at Enterprise Center in St. Louis. We will get to that game in a little bit more on when we are joined in a little bit here by J.J. Regan from NBC Sports Washington. We've had him on the show before. We thought to double down and bring him on back to get the latest on the Caps because a lot of good news to break down today. We will talk about what happened at practice. By what happened, I mean who showed up at practice. We had a few guys that we didn't know were going to be in the lineup this week. Nicholas Backstrom, TJ Oshie, both had non-COVID illnesses, were out the last couple days of practice. They both skated on Thursday, as well as we saw the return of Dmitry Orlov, who was listed as day-to-day with an upper body injury. Great news. Also, Alex Ovechkin and John Carlson, and there was one more player that I can't remember off the top of my head that had a day off as well. Carl Hagelin, Evgeny Kuznetsov too, and John Carlson all had maintenance days, so a little bit of day of rest before the morning skate on Friday here today, before the game against the Blues later tonight. Of course, the Blues, they were kind of hit with a little bit of a COVID bug as Vladimir Tarasenko, Scott Perunovich, as well as Jake Wallman all put on COVID protocol. Tarasenko, a big catalyst in the game for the Penguins, or against the Penguins before Pittsburgh ended up coming back to win the game. And Tarasenko, who was the leading scorer for St. Louis, one of the best players on that team. That is a huge loss for this hockey club as they're kind of right now just trying to find a way to stay in that hunt, that Central Division that's starting to tighten up with Colorado surging. Minnesota's still there, but Nashville's right behind them. This is a really good hockey team and a really good hockey conference that we thought was going to be one of the weakest, given the fact, I thought it was going to be strong. Then it started off weak, and now it's really packed towards the top of that conference, that division. Sorry, I'm kind of, at times I have a relapse to last year because we are still in a pandemic where I thought of each 4 divisions as like their own separate conference. The Pacific Division is whatever, but that Central, boy, oh boy, is it tough to play in right now. And the Blues are coming off a tough game. They need to find a way to bounce back. Jordan Binnington did not have a good game. Really, Sidney Crosby took over that game for Pittsburgh on Wednesday too. So, the Blues are a little bit salty coming in, and the Caps got to be ready for it. The Caps have had a few days off since that loss, but of course the Capitals are a little bit salty as well. They are trying to kind of thwart off the demons of losing to the Devils, not the demons, the Devils on Sunday in overtime. I'm curious to see how the Capitals are going to come out in this game because and we're going to get to a little bit this with J.J. Regan here in just a couple of minutes, but that they're going to be ready to go, have this long layoff, and it is tough. The players have spoken out about it. Tom Wilson in particular, you're off, you're on, you're off, you're on. It's very hard to get any sort of consistency or any routine, if you will. So we'll have to wait and see how the Washington Capitals react to this on Friday, and of course Saturday as well, taking on the Minnesota Wild. That's going to be an even tougher game because second half of a back-to-back. What does this mean for the goaltending situation? As far as we know, everyone was on the ice, but the news was that Zach Fucale was reassigned to the taxi squad from Hershey, and Hunter Shepard was reassigned to Hershey from the taxi squad. Literally, this move happened in one day. Phoenix Copley gets sent down. Hunter Shepard, who was originally was put on the taxi squad, then taken off it, so Zach Fucale got called up, which might mean that Zach Fucale may be playing this weekend. We'll have to ask Regan what he knows and what he thinks may happen when we get to this weekend set. So we'll get to that here on just the other side, guys. But it is the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure you include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar and maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar, it makes it easier to stick to your resolutions as well because it tastes so good, you'll want to eat it, unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky, waxy, or taste like a plain old chemical spill. You'll want to eat it healthy because sometimes it gets so boring, though. By like week 3, you're thinking, is this even worth it? Well, guys, I'll tell you right now, it's worth it because if you get some of the chocolate bars, Built Bars are covered with 100% real chocolate. So go to built.com right now, use the promo code and locked15, to get 15% off your order. That is locked15, locked in the past tense with the number 15 for 15% off at built.com. And as we mentioned off the top of the show, guys, we are joined for the first time with video from NBC Sports Washington. He covers the Caps just like some of the best in the business. J.J. Regan, the most popular Regan in Washington, D.C. Regan, how are we doing today?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I am swell. Just got done shoveling another 4 or 5 inches off my driveway. How about you?
Yeah, we're deep in the panic of 5 inches of snow in the Washington, D.C. area. That has completely crippled this area. And now we're going to get hit with more. So, I don't think my kid's ever going back to school.
Oh, man. So you're telling me it's like April of 2020 all over again. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's just like that.
I got to ask this. Coming from West Michigan, where everyone and anyone almost seems like have a snowplow. I don't have one yet because my wife says I need to stay in shape or something like that, or calories or something, whatever. Does anyone in the district own a snowblower, or is it all just, hope and pray it never snows?
It's pretty much, I know they have lots of bread and toilet paper, but I'm not sure if anyone has any snow plows, because it seems the go-to for any time it's supposed to snow is everyone mob the grocery store and get milk and toilet paper, because apparently when it snows, that's the thing that you run out of. I don't know why.
I usually run out of my eggs first. I remember before we had the snow up here, it was like, oh, I should probably get some eggs and some meat or whatever. And then it snowed like crazy. Unfortunately, though, working in radio, it's fun. This rain, shine, tidal wave, whatever it is, snow, you get to go to work every single day.
Yeah, when you cover a bunch of Canadians and Russians, you know that they're going to practice regardless. So you realize, well, it doesn't matter if my neighborhood's plowed or not, because they're going to show up.
You should just shoot him a quick text. Hey, Ovi, can you hitch me a ride there? I need you to bring me to practice today. JJ, this has been an interesting week. Of course, we all know that the Caps were originally scheduled to play on Tuesday to take on the Montreal Canadiens, obviously up north of the border where it may snow a little bit more than it does down here. Unfortunately, due to pandemic restrictions and no fans in attendance, they are trying to push the games back so they could have fans later on in the season. So that gives us a 4-day stretch off, which, is nice given the fact that there's another 4-day stretch off next week here. But when I was talking to John Walton yesterday, the only, dare I say, silver lining in this whole week is that there's been no short of stories. We ended up we have Dmitry Orlov and Ilya Samsonov both leave practice the other day, both injured. But then we had TJ Oshie and Nicholas Backstrom both go down with non-COVID illnesses and had to miss the last couple of days of practice. However, maybe it just kind of seemingly worked out all together at one time. All the good things come back together. Oshie, Backstrom come back to skate, Dmitry Orlov skating. That's really big because John Walton and I were trying to be Coach Laviolette and try to figure out how the lineup was going to look with those 3 guys missing yesterday. How big is it that those guys are back on the ice and practicing, at least on Thursday?
Well, it's definitely huge to have so many guys back, especially, this team is sick of being sick and sick of having players out of the lineup. So to get some of these big names back is great. Now, I should caution, Laviolette would not commit to Oshie or Backstrom being able to play this weekend. He seemed pretty confident that Orlov and Samsonov would be back, and Samsonov should be fine. He didn't even miss any practice time. It was the tail end of one practice, came back. Orlov missed a practice, looked fine today, said he was fine, but he was hesitant about Oshie and Backstrom, and even said, and those guys are in 2 different categories. So I think there may be some hesitancy to put Backstrom in the lineup just because he's played only 3 games. He's been out. He'll have only 1 practice. So I think he's talking more specifically about Backstrom. So they may not have those guys back. But overall, it's so huge for this team to get some of these players back, because what they've been able to accomplish this season has been incredible considering the players that they've been missing. but you can't do that forever. You're not going to be a first place team forever with Backstrom in and out of the lineup, Oshie in and out of the lineup, Orlov in and out of the lineup. Eventually you need your team to get together, not just for the regular season, which it looks like they're going to be fine in, but also to get some chemistry, to get these guys going, to get them into game shape and ready to go for the second half of the season and into the playoffs. So I think it's huge to get these guys back when they are. Let's just see if they can stay there, because that's been the question all season.
Yeah, because if at any point this weekend, knock on wood, barring anything else happen, let's hope that nothing happens. That means in the foreseeable future, in the next couple of games, there could be an opportunity, JJ, that we have the originally planned Washington Capitals roster that we thought we were gonna see back in September. Unfortunately, Backstrom being out, then Oshie went out, then Wilson went out, then all these other guys kept coming in and out of the lineup. But to have the 23-man roster that we thought we were going to have originally, the old man group, as everyone kept calling it, because the Capitals have this thing about getting old, whatever, but all these rookies came in. How much do you have a difference you think it's going to be when we have the quote unquote normal lineup on the ice for the Caps here soon?
Well, are we even going to see that? Because let's not forget, Anthony Mantha remains out. So,
oh gosh, you had to spoil. I thought we were right there, JJ.
They're still going to be short a man, but Peter Laviolette's going to try new things. We've seen Garnet Hathaway playing the top line the last 2 days of practice. Is he a placeholder with so many guys out? Maybe, but the way he talked about it, it sounds like he envisions Hathaway, or he wants to at least see if Hathaway can have a similar role to what Tom Wilson had. Because remember, when Tom Wilson was up there originally, many years ago, everyone said, "What are you doing putting this guy up there? This Neanderthal on that top line. He can't do anything but fight." Well, Tom Wilson is a pretty skilled player, and he thrived in that line. So Garnet Hathaway doesn't have the same sort of skill as Tom Wilson does, but let's see what his physicality can do in a top 6 role. That should be interesting, and I think it'll also be critical for the power play to get these guys back. Power play has been terrible. Let's call a spade a spade. It's been terrible. The biggest issue, though, is that Nicholas Backstrom is the quarterback of the power play. Alex Ovechkin may be the guy who scores. He may be the most important focal point. But the guy who, the straw that stirs the drink in terms of the power play is Nicholas Backstrom. He runs the entire thing, and he hasn't been there at all. 3 games this entire season. So getting these guys back, you be able to reset on the power play, get better there, which is one of the few, dark clouds of this team in what has been a pretty remarkable season. So I think in terms of that, you get to shore up some of the few weaknesses that you have. And then also, we're not that far away from the trade deadline. It's really hard to evaluate your team when your team's never on the ice and you don't know how all these pieces fit together. So it'll also give Brian McClellan a chance to say, all right, is this guy really set on that line? All right, are we good on that third line? What does the fourth line look like? Do we need a goalie? These kinds of things that is really hard for him to evaluate with people coming in and out of the lineup.
Yeah, the power play, which I don't know how far back it is, but of course the big mark was the 0 for 6 against the LA Kings in the last game, what ended up being the last game before the holiday pause there. And that's been the big question, is trying to figure out a way to get this team going. I tried to do my best John Madden impression to try to figure out a way to score a goal. And then they do it against Detroit, and they didn't do it exactly, JJ. I know Brian McClellan and Peter Laviolette do not watch this show. It's okay. But it was pretty darn close, I'll tell you that. It ended up working to get a power play goal, the game-winning goal for Ovechkin. The record-setting power play goal, of course. But it's one of those things where it's just trying to find consistency. And I know there's a lot of teams that have spells. The Edmonton Oilers are having a spell right now with their power play. The Leafs last year were miserable with the man advantage. It just seems like even with good teams, with skilled players, eventually all power plays and all these big guns will go cold at some point. It's just more or less trying to get past that and get back in the swing of things is what makes a good team a great team.
Yes and no. Definitely, this team has hit a low spot on the power play. It's gone cold, but there are also bigger issues with this power play. And again, Nicholas Backstrom has been out,
right?
But if you watch them play, their break-ins, and this has been a problem for years, their break-ins are too slow and predictable. They've been this way for years. They play the drop pass. Everyone refers to it as the slingshot, but I asked a bunch of players about that a few years ago, and they're like, it's not slingshot. This is not what we call it. So I refer to it as the drop pass. That can work if you play it with speed. because the penalty kill can't adjust for a guy going full speed down the ice. It's hard for them to hold off the blue line. If you run it as slow as the Capitals do, it's really easy to adjust to it. Really easy. And they do it all the time, to the point that once the puck is cleared for the first time, you're just like, well, power play is over. It might be a minute 30 left on the power play. But as soon as they get that clear, you're just like, well, they're never going to get set up again because they can't get into the zone. And the other issue is that they are too slow and methodical with the puck when they do get set up. Look, this power play doesn't use a whole lot of movement. And it doesn't have to. A lot of people will say, look how much the other ones move. Look how much St. Louis moves. Look how much all these. It's fine. It doesn't have to move that much. It just means that you have to be very quick and decisive with where you're going with the puck, which they do not do. You should know where that puck is going before it gets to you. They never do that. What they do is the puck, Kuzi gets the puck and he stick handles. He looks to see if anything's open, and then he'll pass it off. And then the next guy will stick handle, see if they're not going to just move and give you a passing lane. If it's not there, it's not there. But because you have one extra player, they can't cover you if you're moving the puck really quickly.
Right.
So hopefully that's something that will get better with Nicholas Backstrom. Hopefully it'll be a little less predictable, and he'll be able to do things like shoot the puck every once in a while, because the only thing that they've been doing through the month of December is just, let's get the puck to Obi, and we're going to force it there, and nobody else is going to take shots. Nobody's going to try anything. They had 2 power play goals in the entire month of December. Ovechkin had both of them. You have to go back to, I believe, the Carolina game for the last time somebody other than Ovechkin scored, and that was Orlov. That wasn't even a forward. You have to go back to, I think, November 14th. Tom Wilson. That was the last power play goal by a guy not named Ovechkin. Ovechkin's going to get the bulk of them, but he shouldn't be getting all of them. He's not your only weapon on that power play. So yes, it's gone cold, but there are some issues on that power play that you need to work out for it to get better. Otherwise, it's just going to be a bad version with better players.
I'm still one of those guys, and call me old school JJ, but as soon as how the drop back pass brought into the league, I thought it was the stupidest thing ever, because there are some teams that it does work when you have speedy guys, whatever. But I mean, no offense to John Carlson and whatnot, but there's typically not too many speedsters. I'd say if anything, if you threw a guy like Carl Hagelin on the power play, but Laviolette, I don't think will ever want to do that. No offense to Mr. Hagelin, but it's the fact that it only works, like you mentioned, if you have that speed. And that's why I wonder, and I don't know how trustworthy they are with it, but would Tom Wilson be that drop back guy? Because no offense, the guy can skate. And I don't know how many guys in the NHL, not even Zdeno Chara, would want to step in front of a 6'4", 6'5" guy beaming at him at about 230 pounds. So maybe that would work.
Maybe. They have the guy in Kuznetsov, a great skater who has speed and has great stick handling ability. And I'm not blaming him for the problems. This seems to be just the way that they're taught to do it, that the way that they run it, because Carlson is so slow and methodical, and he does that almost dramatic turnaround. And the penalty kill knows what's happening. You're not fooling anyone by this. The penalty kill knows what's coming when you do this. And then Kuznetsov gets it, and he ambles on up the ice. And if he does manage to get it past the blue line, it's usually around the boards. And so he has to force a bad pass, or he gets trapped along the boards. It's just Kuznetsov is the guy who should, he's got all the tools. He's great stick handler, great skater. He should be able to just blaze his way into the offensive zone. And for some reason, that's not the way that they are taught to run this. And I don't understand. If you're going to use the drop pass, I don't understand why you're not using it correctly.
Yeah, it's unfortunately, then again, JJ, if we knew exactly, I think there's a different way to do it. If you don't see something working, you would want to try a different way to get in the zone. Maybe traditionally, I don't know, throw the puck up the board, spread them out a little bit, try to get the zone with group speed instead of one guy with speed. But then again, unfortunately, we'd be getting paid a little bit more if we were able to make those decisions for sure. But let's move along here before we lose our minds on the fact that this team can't work the special teams at all too. The penalty kill too is also below 90%, which it's kind of tough. Now, granted, it was hard. We're sitting on this for 4 days now, but the team only had one power play on Sunday against the Devils. So it's kind of hard to really judge and say, how have they not fixed it since Christmas? Well, they had one chance since then, or two chances. Well, they went 1 for 2 or 1 for 3 against Detroit. I forget now.
1 for 3, I believe it was.
1 for 3. Okay, so they had 4 chances, and they got 1. And I remember the one time I ever questioned a coach's decision on a power play when they had 1 power play goal in a game. They went 1 for 5, but he thought that was good enough, and I got chewed out during the presser. So I'm never going to do that again. But we'll get back to our interview with J.J. Regan here in just a moment, guys. But I got to tell you that BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports wagering action for 2022. New year and a new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code Locked On to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, do not wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. But I want to go back to the goaltending here. You said Samsonov's good to go, and then we saw this whole shuffling today with the taxi squad. Hunter Shepard moves to the taxi squad, but then he gets sent back down. Now Zach Fucale goes up to the taxi squad, which made me wonder, given the fact that Fucale's already played this year, is that a move that that McClellan and this team is making just to make sure they have a goaltender that was ready to play in the NHL? Because Phoenix Copley was the guy for a minute on the taxi squad. Is this a move out of caution for Fucale to have in the taxi squad, or is this going to be the long-term plan to have him ready just in case something were to happen to Samsonov or Vanacek?
I can't imagine that this is going to be a long-term thing because they want these guys to play. Now, it's hard. Every time they make a move like this, I say, oh, well, this is probably because of this. And then they make a move that completely contradicts that 5 minutes later, because that's just the era of COVID where we're making all this up as we go along. So the Hunter Shepard thing was weird. Maybe that was just a travel issue where they didn't think Fucale could get there in time. I haven't checked Hershey's schedule. Maybe there was something, to get him to. Maybe Shepard was able to come yesterday, and Fucale had to stay last night for a game. I don't know exactly. I imagine the Fucale recall for the taxi squad was because they're traveling, and it's a back-to-back on the road situation, and you want to have another guy there just in case something happens to Samsonov or Vanacek. So that would be my guess. But, as soon as I say that, that's going to be contradicted, and Fucale is going to be sent down before they even get on the plane. So who knows what's happening. But they want these guys to play. I don't think they're going to bring Copley or Fucale just to park them on the taxi squad. I don't think that's going to be the situation this year. I think we're going to see just a lot of shuffling to try to get these guys in and out of the lineup, both in the AHL and in the NHL.
Yeah, Shepard, who started there with South Carolina in the ECHL. They did play, to your point there, JJ, they did play Lehigh Valley on Wednesday. So that's probably why Fucale, and I believe Fucale did play in that game, the overtime win. Zach Fish on the call, by the way, for the Hershey Bears down there, or up there, depending on how you're looking at it, of course, down there in the American League, whatever. But you mentioned, you kind of teased there, and this is something we briefly touched on Wednesday or on Thursday about the goaltending and how it may be a little inexperienced come the playoffs method, because let's be honest, we saw Braden Holtby in 2020, and then we saw in 2021, we saw 3 goaltenders. We saw Vanacek for about 5 minutes. Craig Anderson tried to save the day, and then Ilya Samsonov coming later. So not a whole lot of experience with this duo here, and with the entire organization for that matter, because Copley and Fucale obviously haven't seen the net in the playoffs. Do we dare hint at the question of a move for a goaltender for this team? Or is this the group? Because obviously the only way a goaltender gets experience in the playoffs is that they play in the playoffs. Or is this at this point with this team, it's like, hey, we have a chance to win. We should try to win now.
Yeah, so the reason why I think they're going to at least look at it is because this could, and we say this every year, but this could be the last year of the championship window. You don't want that to close because your goaltending wasn't good enough when you saw that this could potentially be an issue a year and a half ago. So to sit in your hands and do nothing and say, well, we're okay with the goaltenders you have. Well, you have to at least kick the tires, because who knows what's going to happen. For me, I think the issue is that if Ilya Samsonov, I think Ilya Samsonov has to be the guy. I think he's clearly the number one. I think the ceiling is so much higher for him than it is for a guy like Vitek Vanacek. So if you go into the playoffs and he's the number one, and you're not 100% confident because he does have inexperience, are you then confident turning to Vitek Vanacek in that situation? And to me, I'm not sure. if you have to pin your playoff hopes on Vitek Vanacek, with all due respect to him, I'm not sure there's enough there. So I wouldn't be surprised for them to kick the tires on guys. Maybe look at that reunification with Braden Holtby if Dallas season goes off the rails. Maybe look at a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury. You have a little bit of flexibility here, assuming that Anthony Mantha is going to be out until the playoffs, which I think he could realistically be. You have a little bit of cap flexibility here. So maybe you look at a move that you probably wouldn't have been able to make otherwise. But for me, and again, Vitek Vanacek, every time the Caps need him, he's been able to step up and play well. It's just that for me, if you're not 100% on Samsonov, and I like Samsonov, I'm a Samsonov supporter. I think he has elite athleticism. I think he can absolutely be a starter in the NHL. But, we've seen some issues in the past. We've seen he plays a little bit inconsistently. If you're not 100% on him, I understand that. It's just if you think it's realistic that at some point you're going to have to look at your number 2 goalie at some point in the playoffs, if that guy is Vitek Vanacek, how much confidence do you then have that you're going to be able to make that run? That's a little shaky for me. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them look into a goalie, because you don't want the last year of your championship window to go away just because you were stubborn and you didn't want to move from either of your 2 young goalies.
Yeah, that's a tough part too, and it's easy to say, I'm like, oh, but look at guys like who have jumped in there. Spencer Knight in his first game played great against Tampa last year, and everyone remembers John Gibson bursting on the scene. I believe it was the 2015 playoffs, which makes me feel ridiculously old, but that's one of those things that it's really tough to do with goaltenders. I mean, I have a poster of Chris Osgood in my office here, and the reason why Chris Osgood got superseded by Mike Vernon was because he had one bad playoffs in 1994, and unfortunately, Jimmy Devellano didn't let him hear the end of it until he retired. So then that's one of those things. You almost have to be 100% on one goaltender and then say, well, if not, we have this guy. So it's going to be an interesting spot here. Quickly, before we let you go here, JJ, let's look at this weekend set coming here. These are 2 tough games against 2 tough Central Division teams. St. Louis on Friday, Minnesota on Saturday, the 2 teams that met in the Winter Classic last Saturday. I think this is going to be a very, I don't want to say, I hate to use the word measuring stick, because this is a Washington Capitals team that is right now tied for the division lead with the New York Rangers at the time we're recording this. But St. Louis is a really good team, even though Vladimir Tarasenko, I know, had just gotten put on the COVID list. And Minnesota, even though they've stumbled, they have shown that they are a team to be taken literally this season with guys like Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and a good goaltender in Cam Talbot. Is it a thing where you look at this weekend set with a back-to-back saying, if we can get one win here, that's a good, successful weekend for this Caps team?
Well, that's something that we can say. It's one of those things that the players will never say, that anything less than 4 points is a disaster. But depending on how they play, I think you can say that if they end up with 3 points, maybe even 2 points, you can sit there and say, pretty solid considering all the guys who've been in and out, considering, Backstrom and Oshie's situation and what this team ultimately looks like. Especially you're welcome if you've got a whole new lineup again, like you have every single night. So, I never really go into these saying, okay, as long as you get this many points, as long as you get this many wins, because it's about the way you play. So if they get only 1 win, but they look good in both games and it's just a fluky bounce or something like that, or if Samsonov lets in 1 goal on 41 shots and you end up losing 1-0. Yeah. It's hockey's just a weird sport. So sometimes it's hard.
No, not at all, JJ. This is a very simple sport. Everyone pretty cut and dry.
Yeah. So sometimes it's hard to draw conclusions just from results alone. I think what you want to see improvement on the power play. You want to see how the top 6 looks. You want to see what the defense looks like, because they've got interesting situation there with Michael Kempney playing well, but possibly back to full strength with the top 6 who played really well at the start of the season. So you want to see how they look. If they get into overtime, can they actually get a point out of that? So I think it'll be more about when you are where you are in the standings and you've done this well to this point, you can look more at the context and on the results. You, of course, want points. You want them to win these games, but I think you're looking more as to what happens in these games and deciding whether or not they were successful that way, as opposed to, well, as long as you get at least 3 points, then it's been a good trip.
Yeah, that's the most important thing too. Like I said, these are two really good teams. Oh, then you get Boston on Monday, who is, I mean, Tuukka Rask may not be back yet, but that team is starting to really turn things around too. So you have 3 tough games in 4 nights here for the Capitals, but then you get another 4 days off, JJ. Empty the tank, right?
Yeah, it was funny. When they canceled the Montreal game, we all looked. In this industry, you live on a day-by-day basis pretty much. So you don't know the schedule too far ahead. And so we were asked, "Are you letting the players be like, boy, this is rare. You're going to get 4 nights off in between games. What are you going to spend all this time on?" And then when we actually looked at the calendar and said, "Oh, you guys actually get this next week too." Oh, well, that's a little embarrassing,
It's like an American League schedule. You play 3 games in 3 nights or 3 games in 4 nights, and you're off for the next 4 or 5 days. It's just like the minors all over again for these guys.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, oh man. It'll be interesting to see. 8 o'clock puck drops for both the St. Louis and Minnesota games out in the middle of the Great Plains, I like to say, out in the United States. Then Boston at home at Capital One Arena on Sunday. On Monday. We'll talk about that game on Monday's show, though. We got to say goodbye, though, to JJ. We know you're a busy guy, JJ. We know you got to shovel all 4 inches of snow that are probably left now, because some of it's probably melted away. And then you got to get ready for more snow coming up here. Thank you very much, JJ, for taking the time. Guys, be sure to follow his awesome work at JJ Regan, NBCS on the Twitters, on NBC Sports Washington. JJ, have yourself a good day. Have yourself a good weekend. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk again down the line.
Sounds good.
And a huge thank you once again to JJ Regan for taking the time to talk to us about the Capitals, as always. So we're going to do some fun stuff here, guys. Remember I hinted about this. We talked about the Premier Hockey Federation All-Stars earlier this week. I'm going to do it. I remember what I kind of said, and I thought to myself, I got to do this because, and this is nothing against it. I love talking about women's hockey, and I would love to do the entire women's college hockey schedule as well. But there's a few more college Division I college hockey programs out there compared to the PHF. So we are, never mind. I should have looked this up prior. I literally went to the PHF website and looked up their games, and all the games this weekend are being postponed. The Toronto Six were originally scheduled to play they were going to play the Buffalo Buttes, and Boston was going to take on Minnesota. All the games this weekend have been postponed. Well, shucks. Well, that's a bummer. However, PHF did announce a new agreement with Warrior. They announced an equipment partnership with Warrior, and Warrior, who's been around hockey for a better part of, almost about a decade and a half at least now. Great story out of there. Certainly something we are going to have to keep our eyes on there, because more and more people, man, getting interested in women's hockey. Good stuff, even though the games got postponed this weekend. Oh, that sucks. I really hate that. All right, well, while I have you here, let's talk about the games that are coming up this weekend across the National Hockey League. More teams in this league. Caps and Blues, of course, tonight at 8 o'clock. Carolina hosting Calgary. Tough stretch here for the Flames. They did not get started on the right foot when they played the Panthers on Tuesday, and they've had to play Tampa on Thursday night as well. So second half of back-to-back for them. Saturday, a big slate of games. Dallas hosting Pittsburgh at 2 o'clock. Interesting game out there. That's a 1 o'clock start time in Dallas. Colorado hosting the Maple Leafs. This was, I believe, this was not a makeup game. This was just a regular scheduled game, because the Leafs are doing that central swing, Arizona, Vegas, and them now. Tampa hosting Boston. That's going to be a very tough, interesting Atlantic Division game. Stumbling Philadelphia taking on the San Jose Sharks. Carolina hosting Florida. That's going to be a fun one to watch. New Jersey and Columbus in Southern Ohio. Nashville taking on Arizona in the desert. Minnesota, of course, hosting Washington. Canucks and Sens in Vancouver. Vegas hosting Chicago. Ducks and Rangers. Wings in LA taking on the Kings. And the games are postponed. Jets and Kraken. Sabres and Canadians. Oilers and Islanders. All those games postponed. So that is it for this edition of Locked On Capitals and this week of Locked On Capitals. Thank you all very much, folks, for listening and watching every day this week. As always, you can follow us, guys, at Locked On Caps. Be sure to follow JJ Regan, by the way, guys, at JJ Regan, NBCS on the Twitters as well. Follow me, the Insider of the Insiders, Tyler Kuehl, on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm going to do something pretty dumb this weekend. I don't know what it's about. I figure I should do something about the Olympics, because there's been some players that have been announced to be partaking in the Olympics, with obviously the NHLers not going, some college players, including University of Michigan. So I may have to discuss that. That'll be interesting. So we'll do all that and have a little fun with that on the social medias as well. We'll be back Monday. We'll be recapping the 2 games against the Blues and the Wild, as well as getting you ready for the Monday night matchup against the Boston Bruins. Couple tough games coming up here for the Caps. And we'll talk about it on Locked On Caps. We'll see you all on Monday, guys. Enjoy the weekend and have a good rest of your day.